Hi, boys and girls. Today we are going to be taco bouting remainders in math. So I thought it'd be super fun to dress up as a taco so we can talk about remainders, okay? Remainders occur when you are dividing in math. And there are 4 different types of remainders that you can get. So we are going to use the acronym, which stands for TACO, T-A-C and O. There are 4 different types. So the T, what we're going to talk about, is we are going to talk about trashing it. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, I'm going to walk you through it right now. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And, okay, so we're talking about interpreting remainders. Okay, I'm going to read this slide to you, and then we're going to practice. So it says, what should I do with the remainder? Sometimes you just need to trash it. Think about what the remainder actually represents. If what it represents isn't really that important to answering the question, you can just trash it. For example, a question might ask you about how many groups are formed. If you were dividing 33 avocados into groups of 8, and you had a single left over, you could just trash it and say that each group had 4 avocados, okay? So what I'm gonna do is share my screen with you a different way this time and solve this with you, okay? So now you should see, let's talk about remainders. And I'm not as good as Miss Dixie with drawing, but that's my little taco over there. Okay, so first, we're gonna talk about trashing it. Okay, and the problem said we're gonna divide 33 by 8, okay? And here's my little guy saying, I think we're gonna trash it. So first, when I'm dividing, I need to think about this number here and my tens place right here. How many times can I multiply 8 to get 3? Well, 8's bigger than 3, so 0. I can't do that. 8 times 0 is 0, so I'm going to subtract, and I come back with 3 again. Well, I need to bring down this other 3, and now I'm looking at how many times can 8 go into 33 when multiplying. If you don't know your 8's times tables, you can use your fingers, or you can put them on the side. So I know that 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2, if I don't know it, I can just add 8 to this 8, which is 16. So 8 times 3 is 24, just adding 8 to 16. And I'm pretty close to 33, but I can still keep going. So let's think about 8 times 4. 8 times 4 is 32, really super close to 33. And if I kept going one more, 8 times 5, it would give me 40, which is too high. So we are going to go with 8 times 4 is 32. So my 8's over here, I put the 4 up here. 8 times 4 is 32. Okay, and I get this remainder of 1. So let's think about this. The problem said, let's go back and I'm going to read it to you. If you were dividing 33 avocados into groups of 8 and you had a single left over, you could just trash it and say that each group had 4 avocados, okay? So in this example, we are actually going to just trash that remainder 1, and our answer would just be 4 avocados, okay? Avocados, there we go. Okay. And that would be your answer, because it doesn't really have anything to do with, the remainder doesn't have anything to do with our answer. It's about forming groups, okay? And the 1 is kind of on its own. It's not in an equal group. So now we're going to go back and we're going to talk about the A in our acronym TACO. So we talked about the T, which is trash it. If it doesn't help you form a group, an even group, then you can just throw it away, okay? So now the A, going to be, sometimes you just need to accept it. So I'm going to read this to you, and then we'll try to solve this type of problem with accept it. Think about what the remainder represents and what the question is actually asking. If it's important to give an exact answer, you will need to accept the remainder evenly among the groups. You can do this by showing the remainder as a fraction or a decimal. For example, a question may ask you to divide 245 cents into dollars. If you were dividing 245 cents into groups of 100 to make $1, and you had 45 cents left over, you could show the remainder as a fraction, but we're not going to talk about fractions. So I'm going to show you, we're not at fractions yet this year. So I'm going to show you how we would solve that on my paper, okay? So we talked about trashing it and forming groups, and now we're talking about accepting it, okay? So they talk about using, once we solve this, they're going to talk about fractions, but again, we're not there yet, so just watch and listen to how I accept my answer, all right? Now, I've got 100 divided by 245 cents, right? And they use 100 because there's 100 cents in a dollar. So 100, how many times can I multiply 100 to get close to 245? And hopefully you're thinking, okay, well, I know 100 times 1 is 100. That's still pretty far away from 245. So what if I try 100 times 2? That gives me 200. Okay, pretty close to 245, but if I went one more, ooh, 300. Notice that pattern, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the 100 stays the same, but 300 too high, 100 too low. So I'm going to put a 2 up here because 100 times 2 is 200. Now I subtract. 5 minus 0, 5. 4 minus 0, 4. And then, of course, 2 minus 2 is just nothing. So instead of doing the $2 with 45 over 100 like how they recommend, we're just going to say go ahead and accept it. So I'm going to leave this out for now. This will come later in math, but not yet. We're just going to have our answer $2 with a remainder of 45. Okay? And that would be our answer there. All right? So we've talked about how to trash it. We've talked about how to accept it. Now we only have 2 more to go, and we are going to talk about copying it. So we've got the T, the A. Now we're talking about the C, which is going to stand for copying it, okay? So sometimes you need to just copy it. Think about what the remainder represents and what the question is actually asking. If the question is asking how many times, or I'm sorry, how many items are the leftovers, just copy the remainder as your entire answer. So for example, a question might ask or tell you to divide a lime with 8 slices among 3 friends, but then it may ask you how many pieces are left. In this case, you would answer, your answer would just be your remainder, okay? So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to solve how to copy it. All right. So let's move this page over, get this one out of the way, and bring over copy it, okay? Here's my little diagram, cut, copy, or paste, we're gonna copy it, okay? So we've got 8 slices of limes, we're trying to divide it between 3 of our friends evenly, but they're asking how many slices of limes would be left over. So I've got to think about, okay, well, how many times can I multiply 3 to get me close to 8? Let's go to the side. 3 times 1, 3. 3 times 2, 6. I'm adding 3 each time if I don't know my times tables. But 6 is a little too low, but let's go to 3 times 3. Ooh, 3 times 3 is 9, which is too high. So cross out the 9, cross out the 3. We're going to use 3 times 2 is 6, okay? So since my 3 is out here, I'm going to put my 2 up here. 3 times 2 is 6, which I'm subtracting. 8 minus 6. You can use your fingers if you don't know. 8 minus 6 is 2, okay? So here is our answer right here because they want to know, well, how many would be left over? Or basically, your remainder is your answer. So copy it right here if they're asking you how many are left over, okay? So 2 would be our answer there, and all you have to do is copy it, and that's it, okay? We only have 1 more to go over, and that stands for 1 more, actually, and it's in a letter O, okay? So we've talked about trash it. Our A was accept it. C is copy it. And now we're going to go to the O, which stands for 1 more. So again, sometimes in math, you have to decide, am I using the T? Am I using the A? Am I using the C? Or am I using the O? You really have to think about what the question is asking you before you just try to use one of these strategies, all right? So sometimes you just need 1 more. And this is the last strategy for our taco about it. It says, think about what the remainder represents and what the question is actually asking. Sometimes you can't just trash the remainders. In this case, you will need one more than the original quotient. For example, a question may tell you that 16 students are going on a field trip to the taco shop, and 5 can fit in a car. If the question asks how many cars will need to go, the answer would be 3 remainder 1. The 1 represents the 1 student who would be left over. You can't just trash the student, so you will need to add 1 more to the quotient and take 4 cars instead of 3. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to solve for the O. All right, so again, we have 16 kids who want to go to the taco shop, but we have 5 cars, right? So let's go ahead and think about 5. How many times can I multiply it to get me close to 16? Well, 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3, ooh, really close to 16, it's 15. And if I went 1 more, I know I'd be too high, 2 over 16. That gives me 20. So we're going to use 5 times 3. My 5's out here, so I put my 3 on top. 5 times 3 is 15. And there's that remainder 1. So how many cars would they need? Think about, remember, only 5 students can fit in each car, but 16 students want to go. So I think I said earlier, I might have messed up what the problem said. The problem said that 16 students want to go, but 5 can fit in a car. So we're trying to figure out how many cars do we need so everyone can go. Well, if you have 3 cars, remainder 1, we have to interpret this remainder. What does this mean? The 1 stands for, well, 1 student, guys. 1 student's left over. Poor thing. So we can't forget him. We have 3 cars, but he can't be left out. So we need to add 1 more car, and our answer would actually be 4 cars total we need to take so everyone can go. All right? So let's recap before we stop. When we talk about remainders, you can trash it, okay? Now that's talking about grouping. If they're asking you how many groups can you make, you don't need the remainder, okay? Because they're talking about how many groups can you make. So you can trash it. The A stands for accept it. So sometimes, especially when they're talking about money and you have a remainder, you're going to accept it. You're going to keep it, basically. You're going to keep it in your answer, all right? So that was our $2.45. Our third strategy for talk abouting remainders was copy it. So in this instance, we're talking about 8 slices of limes, and we try to divide it between 3 friends. They wanted to know how many were left over, and that answer would have been 2. 2 slices were being left over. And in this case, you just copy your answer down here, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And our last strategy is O, 1 more, okay? So in this case, if they're asking you to think about things like where if students are trying to go on a trip and they need cars or they need to fit everyone in a car, you can't just leave a remainder out because that remainder 1 stands for a student. So in this case, you'd have to add 1 more and bump it up to 4 cars total. All right. So I hope that this helps you understand a little bit more on how we talk about remainders and what we think about them. So don't forget, T.A.C.O. when you talk about remainders. Have a good day. Goodbye.